You're now listening to the Peach Pundit Podcast, where we are expressing our own personal opinions. These views may not reflect the opinions of those whom we may be professionally affiliated.
Like I said last week, I insist that we have the best bumper music in all of the podcasts that have ever been made. Anyway, welcome back to another episode of the Peach Pundit Podcast. I'm Jason Pye, joined by Scott Turner. Hey Scott,
how's it going?
It's going well. We're buzzless this week. Buzz is taking a much needed week off, but we have another candidate for you. Today, joining us is Jeannie Seaver. She is a candidate for Lieutenant Governor of the state of Georgia. Jeannie, hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on today.
Our pleasure. So, we've been doing this pretty regularly, introducing candidates to our listening audience, and we put out an open call. People have responded. You're among them, and we want to learn a little bit about you, hear why you're running, and what you're running on. So, tell us how your campaign's going, and what the reception has been to your candidacy thus far.
Yeah, that's great. The reason why I got in this race was that I've been traveling around this state for 22 years helping conservatives get elected. And Georgians, from what I'm hearing, because I was actually hired by Donald Trump back in 2015 as his grassroots coordinator. So I've been traveling around the state for a long time listening to Georgians and their cares and the concerns. And Georgians are sick and tired of, of elected officials showing up every 2 to 4 years asking for time away from their families, money out of their pockets to go out and work hard from them, and then they never hear from again. They go back to the status quo. Georgians are sick and tired of that, and I've seen it over and over in the years, so I decided to get into this race. I'm an outsider businesswoman. I work for a private equity firm that buys and sells companies in aviation. I've been there for 22 years. I, like most of you, have to work for a living and run a statewide campaign, but I promise you no one's working harder to earn your vote than Jeannie Seaver. I've worked in the legal field for 25 years, and I've also been a political consultant. I have my own small business where I've represented candidates, but I've also been into entrepreneurship with our younger generation, where I go out and I say, hey, you're working with somebody else. I go, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And then they'll say, well, I'd love to do this. And I'm like, it only takes about $100 to do it. And I'll help you do that. So I help them get on track, because that's a lot of what I do, is form companies for every investment that we invest into. And it's really inspirational. I've been an at-risk kid advocate for over 15 years. And I think that it can take a minute to turn around a child forever, but I'm all about a hand up, not a hand out. I think that's really, really important. So my message has been very well received as I've traveled around the state. There's a lot of talk out there. Jeannie is the dark horse in the race, but, and it seems like everybody wants to just talk about that one poll that was done with the University of Georgia, which rated me very low in the poll. But what they didn't talk about was, one, the fact that Winston Sears had 1% name recognition and was that low in the polls. And she's now the lieutenant governor of the great state of Virginia. And also in that poll, 53, sorry, my cat is trying to jump up here and talk to y'all too. And also in that poll, 53% of folks that voted in that poll out of 735 were undecided. So all I can say is establishment would love to put this genie back in the bottle, but I'm out there still working hard to become the next lieutenant governor in the great state of Georgia.
That's a great line. I love that line. So as you travel the state and you're talking with regular Georgians, what are some of the issues you're hearing that are important to them?
Of course, as y'all know, election integrity. Georgians are not feeling that their vote, excuse me, as their vote counted. I think that if I would have been the lieutenant governor, I would have actually, at the time of the SB 202 discussions, I would have actually caucused harder with my senators, because a lot of people don't even know, guys, what the lieutenant governor duties are. and they are the president of the Senate. And I promise you, as the next lieutenant governor, any legislation that infringes on your freedoms will not be allowed on the Senate floor. But I would have been with them caucusing harder to eliminate the no excuse absentee voting and the drop boxes. I wouldn't have pushed to have the drop boxes in that legislation because those seems to be two of the biggest issues. And if there was fraud, when there was, I mean, there's proof of fraud over and over, and that's where we could eliminate that. So, and the Dominion machines, people do not like the Dominion machines. I've been talking about eliminating the Dominion machines, but Birch voted to give it to us. But also with the solution, a paper ballot, but I don't know if you've heard of that legislation that Representative Charlize Byrd had presented about 2 years ago. It's HB 228, or I'm sorry, HB 28. And it basically is legislation that mandates that anybody that's illegal or foreign national, that be indicated right there on their driver's license. So whenever they go to vote, it would be right there visually and clear who's illegal, because that's what they want. They want every legal vote counted. That really matters to Georgians.
So, are there any other issues besides voter integrity that you're hearing about?
CRT, of course, that's a big issue. There is a huge divide. It is Marxism, in my opinion, the CRT program. I think that it never should have actually been allowed in the Supreme Court, that decision on Roe versus Wade. I think it always should have been up to the states to decide, each state decide on what, I'm sorry, I'm mixing the two, aren't I?
Well, they're both important issues.
Yeah, there are. So, but yeah, it's, I say, get rid of CRT. If anybody's caught teaching it, fine them $20,000, take that $20,000, put it in a special fund, and give some of that money back to our teachers, because we all know our teachers are forking money out of their own pockets to make sure that they have the tools they need for their children in their classrooms. I think that's really important. Another thing I've been talking about, and I've been advocating, you've heard of the fair tax?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I've been advocating for the fair tax for over 15 years. I actually learned about the fair tax from one of my greatest friends, Herman Cain. And so I've been advocating about that for 15 years. And so when I got in this race, and I've had a relationship with a lot of the fair tax people on the state and the national level, and Emory Donahue, I don't know if you're familiar, he presented legislation called the Georgia Fair Tax Act, which is a consumption tax on sales and services. And everybody pays their fair share between the drug dealers, the illegals, none of the automatic, easy rollover, corporate rollover tax exemptions. That would all go away. Georgians would get more money back in their pockets, and then they get to in their paychecks, and they get to decide when, how, and where to spend their money. We now have what, a $30.2 billion budget. And I'm big into zero-based budgeting, and I think that Georgians are way overtaxed, and I think the solution is the Georgia Fair Tax Act. But let me tell you something, a lot of the economists will try to tell you that the reason that there's such a surplus in revenues collected, because we had 3.7 billion in surplus this year. We now have 4.3 billion in our rainy day fund, and then 1.1 billion that our elected officials decide how they're going to spend that this session. And they actually are giving that back to Georgians, $1.1 billion to tax-paying Georgians that have filed their tax returns in the last couple of years. They're given 250 individuals. I think it's 350 or 375 for head of households, and then 500 for married filing jointly. But the bottom line is, if you remember back in January 1 of 2019, there was legislation that they passed that basically said, okay, Georgians, our legislator said, anybody that buys anything on the internet are charged a 7% sales tax. That's where a lot of our surpluses are coming from. We're overtaxed. I think everybody will pay their fair share. Now, Bert and Butch have been out there saying, that it's their idea. But if you Google it, you'll find I'm already an effective leader because a lot of the candidates are picking up my platform that never talked about it before. 10 or 12 years that my opponents, the state senators, have been in there, they've never done anything, ever talked about eliminating the state income tax with a solution. I'm the candidate and I'm offering that solution.
So years and years ago, there to eliminate the state income tax and go with a fair tax. In fact, I worked on a campaign 2010 2012 where a candidate had proposed eliminating the state income tax and going with a Georgia fair tax, and he was actually knocked by his primary opponent for that. And the reason he was knocked because for two different reasons. The first reason was because eliminating the state income tax in favor of a sales tax would include having to bring or having to tax groceries, which are currently exempt from sales taxes. And then he also mentioned that currently Georgians can write off their income tax. Well, then for currently there's a cap on it. Georgians can write off their income tax on their federal income tax. They write off their state income tax on their federal income tax. So my first question, I think, is how would you because if you eliminate the income, all four, but I also acknowledge that you're going to have to replace that revenue stream with another revenue stream that simply cutting spending or doing some form of austerity is probably not going to be very popular with taxpayers, considering the bulk of state dollars are spent on Medicaid and education, and then to a lesser degree corrections. So how are you going to make up the revenue loss that comes from state income tax?
Well, first and foremost, the Georgians will be getting more in their paychecks, so they will be putting that money back into the economy for one. But they are choosing when and how and where to spend it. Another thing is that I think that if we eliminated the state income tax, some of our biggest competitors is Tennessee, Florida. They don't have state income tax and millions of surplus. And then you've also got Texas, of course, they've got oil, but they've got billions of dollars in surplus there. So I think that will entice people in industries to come to Georgia. And I really think, listen, they've talked about in the legislation, who I think you're speaking specifically of, Emory Donahue, because he was the one that authored that legislation. No, where there was 2 or 3 other people that were in there too. Maybe it was Buzz, I don't know. But one of the things that they have been studied, and Emory did refile legislation this session in March of 2022, the Georgia Fair Tax Act again. And there's been some updated studies that right now we currently pay 4% sales tax. With the consumption tax, they're talking about moving it up to I think they were talking 6.4, but now with some recent studies and some things not even allocated in, that it could be as low as 4.3%. I'm not saying it's perfected. There is language. I'm not going to tell you I'm an expert, but I'm smart enough to surround myself with someone like Jim Duffy and Linda Mink and all of the different folks that I've been advocating with, and on the national level, to make sure that we could do it. Because I think there's 6 or 7 states. I don't know if y'all know that. I think there's 6 or 7 states that have gone from a state income to a sales tax, and I think it's showing very successfely.
I have another question as it relates to taxes and generally. I've seen various studies from around the country. North Carolina and Texas are 2 of the ones that immediately come to mind that show both illegal immigrants and legal immigrants contribute to a state and more than pay their way and contribute to state economies. And that includes, like, if someone is, someone's illegal, and when I work in the industry, for example, and they obviously they obviously were in the country illegally using fraudulent social security numbers. They weren't collecting benefits, but they were paying into the system. So they were paying also federal income taxes and state income taxes, although they weren't benefiting from it. Obviously, they paid sales taxes and whenever they made a purchase. And if they lived in apartments, property taxes is paid through the apartment complex. So that would be included in the rent. The notion that illegal immigrants don't contribute kind of bothers me. What would you say to that if someone said, well, illegal immigrants do contribute to the economy? They're just often a scapegoat for Republicans to beat up on in election years and in prime.
Well, now we all know. I mean, look, I am not against if we gave illegals 3 months, 3 months to sign up and starting the process of becoming legal. I wouldn't have a problem with that whatsoever going forward with that. Really, I mean, come on. My grandson is Hispanic. It's not that there's any problem with that, but I just think we're all expected to follow the laws. All right. Yes. Do they contribute to the economy? Absolutely. When they, but they're not filing tax returns. Are they filing tax returns? Are they paying the income tax that they should be paying? That is, that is the problem. Why is it such a double standard? Why some get to do one thing while we're expected to do other things? I just think there needs to be something, to bring them forward to actually sign up to become legal citizens. And I would support that. I really would. But just to be out there and, we all know that we're paying for it in the education system, right? We're paying for we can't ask, there was decisions made that we can't ask if they're legal or legal to go into our school K through 12 education system. And so they're getting the education. So are they paying property taxes? Maybe through rent, maybe through home ownership. I would think at times, but I still think that everybody must be paying their fair share. And that's what's really, really important to Georgians.
Just so that everybody doesn't think that I agree with Jason all the time, this is a great example of that. Jason's statement in there somewhere in his question was that they're not benefiting from the taxes that they pay, and I would say that they certainly are. Whether it be in public school education, they would get for their children, or national security. Or
I should clarify, they're not benefiting as much as average citizen would. They obviously use services, but not to the extent they underutilize services.
And the vast majority of them are not stealing somebody's social security number and paying into the social security system. The vast majority of them are getting paid under the table, which allows them to compete at a lower wage and essentially give fuel to the fire of this perception that Americans are losing jobs. All of that to say, there's two sides to that argument, and one candidate for LG certainly isn't going to fix it overnight. But I will give you an opportunity, Jeannie, to go ahead and tell everybody about your website and how they can get in contact with you. It's less than 2 weeks now till voting.
I really have one more issue that's really, really important, that it makes me stand out more than the other two candidates, in that I am the only candidate in the race that's standing up against legalizing gambling in Georgia. I am all about the people deciding. Believe me, I've always been a true patriot, never want government to interfere. But legalized gambling in this state would be catastrophic. We've got studies at Georgia, at Terry, we've got studies in Georgia Tech, and also at Mercer, that basically has shown economically that this would be a total disaster. And this is who this gambling is targeting. If y'all can see this, it's targeting our children. 1 out of 5, did you know it was the highest addiction in the nation? And 1 out of 5 that become addicted to gambling commit suicide, attempt to commit suicide. And Burton Birch will tell you, well, I'm all about the people decide. But if you're all about letting the people decide, could you, for God's sake, be honest enough and put it in the legislation? Because it has to be a constitutional amendment. And in that language, they use destination resorts. They can't even use the word casinos. And they're actually taking money from Boyd Gaming. They say they're not supportive casinos, but they're taking donations along with Stacey Abrams. Boyd Gaming is an entertainment industry that also is invested and invest into casinos. So this is, like I said, I was talking to a young boy that was at a GOP meeting one day, and we were talking about the gambling. And I don't understand why Butch and Bert or any of our elected official, 84 lobbyists and billions of dollars at that state capitol trying to get gambling passed. But the little boy said, Miss Seaver, I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about gambling, 10 years old. I constantly have slot machines, which is the worst addiction of all gambling. Constantly have slot machines popping up on my iPhones, my iPads, and my computer games, encouraging me to go to play the slot machines to get free stuff. And do they have cartoon characters like Sonic or Spider-Man? I'm telling you, they're targeting our children. And if I've been traveling around the state for 14 months and educating voters, Georgians on this, they're shocked. They had no idea. And I say, please go home, check your children's and your grandchildren's, iPhones and video games, because I'm telling you, they're popping up.
Well,
And so
Jeannie, you would just let everybody know we're running out of time. So go ahead and
okay,
wrap up by telling us how to get in touch with you if we're interested in following your campaign.
okay. So my campaign email is, my website is Seaver, SEAVER 4LTGOV.com. I'm on Facebook. Just look for Jeannie Seaver for Lieutenant Governor. And I promise you, as the next Lieutenant Governor, I will go up there and I would be honored to have your vote to take your issues and your concerns as your public servants. And we must always, and I will be that voice and advocate to take care of our veterans too. Thank you so much for having me on, and I apologize for going over time.
No, you're
good.
fine.
You're good, Jeannie. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure you stay on. We'll take you off talking, and make sure you stay on so we can get your video uploaded. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So we're gonna go ahead and start out with our regularly scheduled podcast. Scott, I've missed you for the past week, man.
I'm joyful. I am joyful. Yes, the Lord says to consider it pure joy to experience trials of many kinds, Jason, and I am joyful.
Is your first full week of being editor of Peach Pundit that tough? Is that
well? I'm really proud of the work y'all are doing. And I say y'all because I think I posted once and we've got like 15 new posts up there. And you guys are rocking it right now, including about one of the topics that we're going to talk about at length this evening. But I mean, seriously, I couldn't be more proud of the new contributors and the old contributors really just ramping up, man. The quality and quantity of the content that is at peachpundit.com right now is outstanding. It's stellar. Y'all are amazing.
And make sure, for those of you who are listening, patreon.com/peachpundit, you can contribute to what we're doing and all that. Any contributions you guys send us will go right back into the podcast. In terms of buying better equipment, making this sound more professional, I'm not on my normal setup today, but my nice setup is currently in my office, and I didn't bring it with me. So we have a pretty packed podcast, despite the fact that we are, again, buzzless. So there I need a buzz. Yeah, no joke. So I saw this on Facebook the other day that Dinesh D'Souza has put out another documentary, using that term very loosely. They're about as he puts together documentaries that are about as I don't know. They seem to have an agenda that is the polar opposite of what my meaning that they have a pre-drawn out conclusion. Be that as it may, he has put out another film, so to speak, and it talks a lot about surveillance video in Georgia. And I actually saw someone post this the other day. They posted a screenshot of the film of the state of Georgia, and it looks like it doesn't make a lot of sense. And it shows the surveillance, basically someone driving around Atlanta, basically, presumably to drop boxes. They drive all the way out, basically, from what the map looks like it, to Covington, Decatur, and all around. Did you watch this, or are you just have you seen this yet?
I haven't seen it yet. This is what I know about it. Buzz watched it. And I was really sad to hear that Buzz couldn't make it tonight, because he watched it. Somebody sent him a link, said, watch this. They actually paid for him to watch it, which, by the way, D'Souza's charging $30 for people to watch this thing. And he's made $1 million, which means
It's not a grift at all. It's not a grift
well,
at all.
30 or 40,000 people, he's made $1 million on it. So 30 or 40,000 people have watched this thing, but it is, we have to talk about it because Georgia is one of the targets here. I read some things. I've read an interview with D'Souza about it, and I've read some things. I have not had the time to watch it. I do plan on watching it. But why don't you tell me more about the map? And I'll tell you some other thoughts I have around the central theme about it.
Well, it's going to take me a minute to go back and find the map, because Lauren Collins posted it on Facebook the other day, and he basically just said, like, he posted it and said, tell me what the problems with this map are. And the way the map was done, if you're friend with Lauren on Facebook, you can go to his Facebook page and go back a couple days and find it. But basically, it was like the map didn't make any sense. Like, geographically, it didn't make any sense. There were like Decatur was outside the perimeter, for example, in the map.
Oh,
yeah, right.
So it was a incorrectly drawn map.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and you don't know how like who put this thing together, and like I wouldn't be shocked. Actually, I'm gonna text it to you, Scott, just so you can see it, because I don't know how to do this.
Here's the main thrust, right? At one point, they show video of a man. They have found the man, right? The investigators have found the guy with the 5 ballots in his hand, walking to, and I guess this was in Gwinnett County, but they found the guy, and the guy had his ballot, he had his wife's ballot, and his 3 adult children who still lived at home, which is completely illegal. So he had 5 ballots in his hand, and he dropped them in the box. And people have passed that video around saying this is evidence of. Now that's one instance. I don't know how many incidences are recorded in the 2000 Mules movie, but this is the one thing I really wanted to hammer home, is that you cannot ignore that people are fired up about it, right? And there's a whole gubernatorial campaign based upon the concept that's presented in the movie. And so I'm not going to poo-poo the movie. I haven't seen it. But this is my point that I really wanted to drive home. It has been 1 year now since David Schaefer and True the Vote went to Brian Kemp and the GBI and said, will you please investigate this? And it's been 1 year now that the GBI has asked True the Vote for the witness. We have a constitutional republic in this country. Among those rights that are enshrined, that are protected, are your Fourth Amendment rights: search, seizure. It would be inadmissible in court if they went and got this data from cell phone companies without a warrant. In order to get a warrant, they cannot rely on hearsay. They have to speak to the witness who knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And the witness has not come forward. True the Vote knows who that witness is. True the Vote has a patriotic duty to turn that person over to the GBI. They won't. The fact that they won't creates questions in my mind, but a lot of people are fired up about this movie. They're fired up about the fact that the GBI hasn't continued their investigation. They have said point blank in writing to David Schaefer and True the Vote that they will investigate the cell phone data if they can go get a warrant, which means they have to talk to a witness. You have a patriotic duty to name the witness. You have a patriotic duty. Why won't you name them? It doesn't make any sense. If this person was in on a con and they've come out to you, they need to come out to law enforcement. If this is going to be investigated, and it needs to be, just to keep people from getting all fired up about this forever, we need to put this to bed. Let the investigation move forward. That requires the witness talking to law enforcement. Make it happen.
Yeah. And just to note real fast, I mean, the GBI said that they had reviewed video surveillance, including the video that was in 2000 Mules, and basically they found no reason to continue to investigate. And even Secretary Raffensperger said, as Scott noted, he said, "We investigated, and the 5 ballots that this particular gentleman turned in were all for himself and his family members. If there's a there, come and let the GBI investigate it. Otherwise, stop claiming there's fire where there's not."
Yeah,
And that
stop stirring stuff up when you know all you have to do to get this put to bed is bring this witness forward.
Right.
Stop.
Yeah.
You're putting pressure on somebody who is constitutionally limited in their responsibilities and their roles.
Yeah.
And thank God somebody's actually paying attention to the Constitution.
No kidding. And speaking of election conspiracy theories, One America's News ran a segment this week acknowledging that there was no widespread voter fraud committed in Georgia. This had been aimed at 2 particular election workers. And as part of a settlement agreement with the 2 election workers, One American News decided or had to run a segment in which they said there was no spread voter fraud. So, what do you take from that, Sky? And for those of you who are not familiar with One American News, this is a far right competing news outlet. They're competing with Newsmax and Fox News, and One America's News or OAN had been viewed as a competitor of sorts, and become former President Trump's one of his favorite news outlets. And they were actually sued by Dominion for their claims about voter fraud. So, Scott, what do you make of this?
So, a funny
retraction?
story. When I was on the House Governmental Affairs Committee and Rudy Giuliani came, he didn't actually come to our committee. He came via Zoom. He didn't mute himself. And he was talking to his assistant in the background. And you could go watch the video of this. This is on the House website in our archives. He actually says to the assistant, "Oh, get these clips over to OAN, get this clip and that clip, these 2 specific instances. I want those on OAN. I want them running tonight." and he didn't realize, because it was another witness that was speaking at the time, he didn't realize that all of us could hear him. And I want to say that's the same hearing that I had my Festivus poll in the background.
I remember that.
But
I remember that.
Yeah, I had fun when I was in the House of Representatives. OAN doing this is huge. They had to run it once. Unfortunately, they should be forced to run it once an hour, every hour, to multiple audiences, right in the middle of their primetime thing, 4 times an hour. Because the amount of conspiracy theory fodder that's come out of OAN as a result of this election fueled what we're seeing now in Georgia politics. It had a real impact, and them coming clean and saying, we don't know that there was anything there, and specifically there was no widespread fraud, is a good first step, I guess. But I think it falls shy of the damage that they've done.
Yeah, no,
I don't think that's actual justice.
Right. I don't think it is either. And this is, given the damage that's been done, not just by, they were a contributor. They contributed to what happened post-election. And even till now, this, OAN, Newsmax, Dennis D'Souza, and many others, have contributed to the big lie that continues to be promoted by not just Donald Trump, but some of his most faithful followers, including David Perdue. And have you read the book, or have you seen the book This Will Not Pass?
No.
It just came out. Jonathan Martin, and I can't remember the other author's name. And in the introduction, they're talking about how his advisors, his campaign advisors especially, were only presenting him with good news. They were never presenting him with bad news. They couldn't show him polls showing how close Georgia was, or that he might actually lose Georgia, because he couldn't picture losing. If he got into single digits in Georgia, he would have been upset. He expected to win Georgia by double digits, by 10 points or more. So when you're giving a candidate only good news and you're never presenting him with bad news, it's no wonder that he thinks it was stolen from him, because his people were only presenting most positive possible scenario, and that scenario turned out not to be true.
I've heard that before. I read Bolton's book where I think he had a section in there about how he perceived that only good news was making its way to the president. So uh, I have heard that before, and I want to say I read that in Bolton's book as well.
Yeah. No, I mean it's just it's frustrating to read that and to know that um this might have, I mean, look, I'm not saying it would have been completely avoidable, but had his advisors been giving him the an honest assessment, um, and telling him, no matter how upset he got, and telling him like, look, you could lose this thing, it might have avoided, or at least not has the situation would not have been as serious as it was. All these conspiracy theories, things like that. This could have been avoided to some degree. I mean, I'm not saying it's likely, Scott. I'm just saying maybe.
Yeah, I don't. He's already planting the seeds. He's already planted them. I mean, he's not planting. He has planted the seed and watered the field. That if David Perdue should beat or should lose to Brian Kemp, that it would be only because of election fraud in Georgia. So he's not giving up on the message. And, here we are less than 2 weeks out from May 24th, and there's no pulling back from President Trump. He is all over Kemp still. Like right now, I'm watching MLB.TV. I got a subscription to that, and I'm watching a lot of Reds loss, although they won today.
How many
and
is
they
that?
won back-to-back series.
6? Oh no.
Yeah,
Really?
no, there's 7 wins now because
Okay.
of they won 14-11. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the Green Bay Packers 14-11 today, and
3 field goals and a safety. Is that what it was?
oh my god, dude, it was the ugliest game, I think. And anyway, all of that to say that instead of commercials, they're running Trump, bashing on, and it's every single commercial break. It's, excuse me, this is Donald Trump. I had to take over your television to tell you that Brian Kemp stole the election from me. And
I'm still getting I don't know how I miss GPV, the debates, but I'm still seeing Georgia-based political ads on the networks that I watch. And is it me, or is this like starting really early? Like obviously the Kemp ad where he's bashing Purdue, talking about how he's contributed to inflation because he voted for the COVID spending packages. He's not outright saying it was the COVID spending packages, but you had $5 trillion or $4 trillion in fiscal stimulus passed by Congress while David Perdue was in the Senate. Obviously that contributed to it, but I'm also seeing Stacey Abrams ads as well. And I realize we're close to the primary, but good Lord, it just seems like it's starting early this year.
Well, I think the Kemp campaign is really starting to pivot towards Stacey.
Yeah.
Feeling comfortable in their lead.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just the Abrams ad especially just looks like a general election ad, just the way it's framed. So that's just.
Well, she doesn't have a primary opponent, so she's starting early. You're right.
No, it is starting early.
Mark it down. I said you're right, Jason.
It's May 11th, 2022, in the year of our Allah. That Scott said I was right about something. You guys watching, just make sure you write this down. Scott said Jason was right about something. Speaking of things that we were right about, we said that the administrative judge who was hearing the challenge to Marjorie Taylor Greene, she who must not be named, would ultimately fail, and it has failed. The administrative judge ruled that the case presented by this progressive group, that she had somehow violated the 14th Amendment, the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment, didn't stand, and Secretary Raffensperger has agreed with the administrative judge's ruling, so she will remain on the ballot in Georgia's 14th congressional district in the primary that is, 2 weeks away? Not 2 weeks away. Yeah.
Not even 2 weeks now. We called that one. And the case was without merit for one very simple reason. Their claim was rooted in the 14th Amendment, saying that people who participated in an insurrection were disqualified from running for office. And no one to this point has been charged with the crime of insurrection against the United States. No one. And because no one's been charged, she's not been found guilty, and therefore you cannot have an administrative judge kick her off a ballot because she's never been charged with that crime. And she's not going to be. And it was really a dumb use of resources. And I wish that people who would go to attack public officials would focus more on the things that they could that are attainable and mattered. And when they went down this path, and I've been saying this about Marjorie Taylor Greene for a very long time, every time you go to throw a punch at somebody like this, they're rubber that bounces back and hits them in the face. She comes out stronger. She raised over $1 million on this, Jason, in the last week on this issue because the grandmas from around the country felt like this lady over here is getting attacked, and they sent her money.
Yeah.
And so the most effective thing, if you're going to fight Marjorie Taylor Greene right now, is to vote for Jennifer Strahan and sending Jennifer Strahan a check. And all that money and resources you spent on that, you should have been bolstering her.
Yeah.
And even if you were a progressive group, because in Georgia, there are open primaries.
Right.
And before somebody twists that, I don't like that idea, but okay.
That's how Republicans got rid of Cynthia McKinney several years ago.
It is. Republicans have done this. They've been smart enough to play the game. Look, here's the bottom line. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I was talking with somebody, a congressional staffer this week, and they said the only thing Jennifer Strahan needs to do, she needs to put it together an ad of the crowd chanting for Putin, 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 and her walking on stage. And that in the 14th district, that's the ad. That's it. That's the only thing you need to say. This is, and more of her actions have led to credibility for that type of ad.
Well, which leads me to her vote yesterday. Yesterday, the House of Representatives passed a $40 billion aid package for Ukraine. This is humanitarian assistance, military aid. This is the latest salvo and military aid that we have sent to Ukraine, which I believe is totaling somewhere in the $55 billion range at this point, if maybe a little bit more. The bill, which is HR 7691, passed the House by a vote of 368 to 57. Of course, all 57 of those no votes were Republicans, and I'm not gonna throw everyone together and say that everybody who voted for this or voted against this had some sort of ulterior motive. Certainly, some of the members who voted against it because they're deficit hawks. I get it. I myself am a deficit hawk. Just the same, though, the optics certainly look bad when you have someone like Madison Cawthorn, who has been largely a Putin apologist, who voted against this, and then also Marjorie Taylor Greene, who voted against
who has also been a Putin apologist,
literally played on state TV in Russia. And
I want to hammer that home. I really want to emphasize that. If you're in the 14th congressional district, your congressperson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is played on Russian state television by Russian state media in support of their efforts in Ukraine.
Yes. Yeah. And she keeps talking about how she was making a claim, our mothers and babies don't have baby food or don't have formula. That is not a governmental issue to be solved. That is, in fact, to some degree, government has caused the issue. They shut down one of the food formula plants. I forgot what state it's in, but shut down one of the formula plants over concerns. Like I said, don't know what the issue is, and maybe it was a rightful concern. But that is not an issue. And also, baby formula issues could be solved by trade, for example, if we would stop, having tariffs on Canadian imports. But let me get there, Scott. But I mean, you look, and again, I want to say this: there are some members who voted against this for probably good reasons. Thomas Massey, I've known Thomas for years. He votes against everything like this. It's not just this particular package. But I'm looking at this and I see 3 Georgia members of Congress who voted against it. I'm looking at Andrew Clyde, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Jody Hice. And I mean, and maybe there are deficit concerns, but I look at this and I look at most of the votes coming from like the House Freedom Caucus, who have just really taken a turn for the worse. And I don't know. I mean, I again, many of the members voted for it with the right intentions, but it looks bad.
Well, if Marjorie Taylor Greene used baby formula as a reason for not spending this money because the government should be spending money on baby formula, then where's her bill to buy baby formula for people or to augment or the cost or offset the cost to the average family?
Yeah.
She's not doing that. This isn't her reason for, if that's her reason, that's a really weak reason. And then she needs to go and fix that. But that's like you said, Jason, it's not the exact role of government. I don't know what Jody or Andrew were thinking, but I do want to say this. Marjorie said that she's an America First person and that this was not an America First policy. Let me explain something that's really simple. It is in America's best interest to keep Russia from taking over Ukraine. Allowing for a nation like Russia to have unfettered military access and overcome any country they want for any reason that they want to at any time that they want to is not in our interest as a country. This is an America First policy. Now, if you voted against it because you had budget concerns or you always do, okay, I get it. But to say that it's not an America First policy is factually errant. You are in error when you say that because you're ignoring the danger that Russia represents if they're allowed to continue unfettered.
Mm-hmm. And her entire, because she said it was America first, not Ukraine first. Everything I've seen from her when it comes to this particular issue seems like it's Moscow first to her.
Putin first. This again is a lady who goes on stage right after the crowd's chanting Putin's name and gives an enthusiastic speech and tells everybody how excited she is to be there.
Yeah.
This is the person who represents the 14th congressional district.
Yeah.
And we haven't doled out any official endorsements around here. I don't live in the 14th district, but if I did, I would be voting for Jennifer Strahan. I absolutely would.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of Miss She Who Must Not Be Named, I published a series of posts on peachpundit.com over the past several days, highlighting things from her record that, well, not from her record per se, but just things she's done or actions she has taken that I find truly perplexing, if not a little outrageous.
Can I just intervene for just a second?
Yeah, sure.
If you haven't read Jason's posts, you need to go to peachpundit.com right now and read them. It is a whole series. It's not just one article. It talks about the campaign funds. It talks about the constituent services. It talks about her other issues, the car being purchased with campaign funds. So, I mean, it's article after article after article. Go read them, learn about some of the other aspects. You did great work on those, Jason.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you, man.
I appreciate it. And it starts with, I mean, you talk about one of the things, I think I've said this before on this podcast, is because you'll have a candidate who's running or you'll have a member who represents a solidly Republican district, yet they vote with leadership all the time, and they're not particularly fiscally conservative in how they vote. And you'll wonder how that person continues to get elected. Good constituent services can save a bad member. And looking at some of the things that are coming out of Georgia's 14th congressional district, the constituent services, I'm not saying they're non-existent. They are, but she came in, she slashed the salaries of some of her district staff. These are the people who are on the front lines. They interface with constituents all day, every day. They are charged with addressing, interacting between government agencies, trying to get benefits for people or clarifying benefits for people or trying to get answers to sometimes complex problems. And it's a very detailed and stressful job. But she came in, she cut staff. From one case, she cut it by $6,000. In another case, she cut it by 15. And that has caused some frustration, not just with the staff in terms of how they interface with constituents, but also with people in the district who they feel, as one story puts it that I quoted from, that they feel largely unattended to. This includes military families. This includes local governments who are looking for some sort of assistance or trying to get business down. For example, they mentioned the Dalton Mayor David Pennington, who's trying to pay an $8 million project, or pay for an $8 million project through a grant program that's funded by the infrastructure law. And he can't get anything out of her office. And she said that she wasn't aware of any communications with David Pennington and her office. And
she's too busy running around the country being a conservative rock star.
Right. Right.
She doesn't know what the job is.
That's right. I mean, there is, there's most of her campaign money is coming from out of state. She got $253,000 from Georgians. She got $328,000 from Californians, almost $300,000 from Texans, $271,000 from Floridians. 10%, less than 10% of her money is coming from Georgia. This is part of her grift. She's continued. She actually talks about this on her official House bio, where she is running. She talks about being the national director of the Family America Project, and there's some pretty like horrifying stuff that's posted, and it's not posted by her, it's posted by other people, but she's an admin and a moderator on this Facebook group, and she allows Holocaust minimizing content to be allowed or to be posted on there that's never taken down. She posts, users post some pretty other incendiary stuff, comparing the WHO to Nazis, for example, or this conspiracy theory that California is pursuing forced internment. And it's some, and there's Russian talking points being echoed about they're calling Ukrainians Nazis and so on and so forth. It's pretty bad, and why she wants to continue to have her name attached to that, I don't know.
To the point where she's putting on her bio on her official House website.
Right, because I remember when you and I talked about this, you were like, well, people add me to stuff all the time. And yeah, I get added to groups all the time too. I'm not often made admins of them. I can't think of a situation where I've been made an admin, but she talks about it in her House bio that she's a national director, or was the national director of this group. And the one other thing is this $92,000 vehicle that she bought with campaign funds. And it's I mean, like, what's your justification for that?
How many embarrassing things does a sitting congressperson have to do before they're tossed out of office by the voters? How many times does she have to embarrass our state, embarrass your district? If you're not embarrassed, you should be. Yeah, I'm embarrassed by her. Same. People talk to me about her all the time. I have friends from out of the state, and hey, how about this Marjorie Taylor Greene lady? And I'm like, can we talk about something else?
Anything else?
I would like to talk about something else. Unfortunately, she has put herself in this position where she is seeking media attention all the time. And she puts herself where she's making headlines, and not the good kind. Yeah. Like, go find something to work on, lady. Look, when I was in the House of Representatives in Georgia, I would get calls from constituents all the time. And they would ask for help navigating the bureaucracy of their state government. And even if it was a program that I wouldn't vote for as a state house rep, I would do everything in my power. If it was the state law and this program existed and this person was asking for assistance, I would do everything in my power to make sure that my constituent was taken care of. Mm-hmm. Even if I disagreed with the underlying policy, the program existed over my objection. I lost the vote. The debate didn't matter anymore. I had a constituent asking for help. Mm-hmm. To ignore a constituent who is asking for help, especially somebody like a mayor of a major city in your district, is unacceptable. It should be grounds for her being tossed out of office by itself. But you add to it the that she sees Nazis on every corner, or that she minimizes the Holocaust at every opportunity, that she celebrates Vladimir Putin at every opportunity. She votes against America's best interest because it may hurt Putin, as an example. Buys cars with campaign funds, which is ethically questionable, even if it's legal. How many things do you need? How many reasons do you need to go look at other candidates who are running in that race and go vote for somebody else? How many?
Yeah. No, it's it continues to blow my mind, and also it still blows my mind with everything she's done that Kevin McCarthy has promised her better committee assignments.
It's incredible.
And I remember having a conversation with a House leadership staffer right before the 2020 election, said they were going to give her 3 strikes. 3 strikes. I mean,
how many strikes has she had, Jason?
There are 27 outs in a baseball game. She's got to be getting close to it.
I mean, gosh.
Yeah. So, anyway, so we actually, so today there was another monthly report on inflation. Inflation for the year, I think, was at 8.3%. Is that right?
8.3% for April.
8.3%. Well, for the preceding 12 months, including April.
Yeah.
It was 0.0. I think it was 0.3 for April, but it all adds up. I love the media narrative. It's like, inflation cooled off in April. We're at 8.3%, 8.3% rather than 8.5%, which is what we were at last month. So yeah, it's cooled off, sure, by fraction.
Yeah, but the CPI doesn't include food or housing costs.
Right. It's
so the two things, or energy, right? Food,
yeah,
energy,
right.
Or housing, which are
Right.
all the 3 big things that everybody pays for, like as a bare minimum, right?
Yeah.
Your food, your power bill, and your roof. And so those things are in the double digits for inflation year over year. So they're cherry picking it dipped 0.2%, but they're ignoring how everything else is skyrocketing in cost.
Right, and it's hitting some areas of the country worse than others. I mean, the top two countries with the top 2 cities with the largest inflation increase at 11%, and Atlanta, which is at 10.8%. And as I mentioned earlier, both the Federal Reserve and other economists have said that part of the inflation problem, it has not been supply chain issues. Yes, that might be some of the problem, but you're ignoring the massive monetary and fiscal stimulus that Congress and the Federal Reserve have put in place since the pandemic began. And again, I want to note, Kemp is hitting Purdue over I think $4 trillion of COVID spending. I don't think he's specifically naming a dollar amount, at least I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's been in total of $6 trillion. That's what's been passed by Congress. And if Donald Trump had his way, it would have been passed while he was still president. But because he wanted $2,000 checks to go to everybody. You cannot put that much money in the economy and not expect the economy to become overheated. And that's exactly what's happened. And we're seeing it through inflation. We're seeing it through an overheated economy that is that frankly is starting to see some impact of inflation through. We see the first quarter we saw negative GDP. And the Federal Reserve is increasing interest rates. They actually raised them by a half point just last week, which that sort of aggressive approach to addressing inflation might in and of itself trigger a recession. So the economic woes seem to be adding up, and you have an election that is, 6 months away.
Right. It doesn't look. The media is going to do everything they can to cover for the Democrats. We know that, and they're doing that here. And we have a long time before the election, but I've seen no action outside of the Fed raising interest rates to try to curb our inflationary period right now. And unless they start tackling this in some major ways, I don't see how they're going to fix it in time to save them from Republicans taking over the House, at least.
No, and I think the jury's out on the Senate, and I think and everybody keeps talking about the impact of the Supreme Court's pending and looming decision in Roe versus Wade, or excuse me, the Dobbs case, which could overturn Roe and Casey. Yes, if you look at the polling coming out, it's actually really interesting. Voters say that abortion should be legal, but it's still not registering as an issue where they're going to vote on. And I think it reminds me of the gun control issue right after Newtown and some of the other shootings that we've seen. Specifically, there was these recall elections in Colorado. I don't know if you remember these, Scott. These were about 10 years ago, where some polling firms were doing polling, and it showed that like 90% of people supported background checks and assault weapons bans and limits on magazines, the number of rounds that could be in a magazine. But they were surprised to see that these Democrats who voted for these laws in Colorado were recalled. And the reason is because voters are not going to go out and vote on the Second Amendment alone or gun control alone. Voters are not going to go out and vote on abortion alone. Some will, yes, but generally speaking, voters are not going to go out and cast their ballot on one issue. And it's something that I think people need to kind of take in consideration. And we talked about this last week. Scott and I have differing opinions on this. I think we're both honest in where we're coming from, but part of my job being in politics is to kind of predict outcomes. And right now, if I was guessing which way the winds were going to go, I don't see this right now having a big effect. People are going to vote on inflation and the economy as a whole rather than they are the abortion issue.
On that, we will agree.
Yeah, that's twice. That's twice this week. Interesting news from our friend Gabriel Sterling. Gabriel, of course, works for the Georgia Secretary of State's office. He tweeted out, "We are at 226% of the 2018 turnout today in Georgia. 254,556 voters have cast their primary ballots. Early in person is at 137,000 GOP, 96,183 Democrat, and 1,638 nonpartisan votes." Again, who votes a nonpartisan ballot? I just don't understand it. And mailed absentee votes, 9,353 for Republicans, 10,005 for Democrats, and 305 nonpartisan. Pretty big turnout so far, Scott. In
I was told by the AJC and Stacey Abrams that voting turnout would be depressed if Republicans were allowed to change election law. That's what I was told. And I want to know where the AJC analysis is on the impact these GOP election bills have had on voter turnout. Is there going to be a mea culpa from the AJC? Are we going to get an article from Greg Bluestein saying, we may have been a little too vitriolic in our rhetoric around these so-called voter suppression bills? Do you think we'll ever see that, Jason? No. I was told that Democrats would not be allowed to vote by the AJC. That's what I was told.
They got that one wrong. I mean, it's bad news sells, drama sells, political intrigue sells, and that was political intrigue, and it sold. But it looks like they got that one wrong. Granted, it's only primary season. Here's me being honest, okay? To compare 2018 to 2022, these two elections may as well have been held in separate centuries. Yeah,
because voting behavior has been modified forever by COVID, and people are going to vote early or by mail. They're taking advantage of the legislature's offer to allow people to vote on Saturdays or Sundays in some areas, and people are doing that because Georgia and the legislature has decided they want to try to make it as easy to vote as possible. And this is the outcome of that. To compare it, you have to look at it through the lens of what changed. And there were two things that changed. One was COVID. Can't ignore COVID in this discussion.
Right.
Major impact on behavioral change societally. Secondly, the law changed to make it easier to vote. And those two things together have created this type of outcome where people are going to go and they're going to exercise their vote. They're going to do it early. People obviously have confidence. Republicans are outpacing Democrats by a wide number because they're starting to have confidence again in the election, in spite of what's being thrown at them and messaging from other places, Mar-a-Lago, that's telling them that their vote could be stolen or their vote was stolen. And Republicans have acted in a responsible way to try to build confidence amongst the electorate that their vote will be counted and people are responding. And it's
Yeah.
easier to vote now than it ever has been. It's easier to cast a legal ballot than it ever has been. And
Just don't
people are
offer
showing.
anybody. Just don't offer anybody water while they're in line.
Well, that's not true either. You can do that. You just have to take it to you can't give it out directly. You have to give it to the election supervisor who would then pass it out because they don't want you buying votes saying, here's a bottle of water, vote for Jason. Here's a bottle of water, vote for Scott. Here's a bottle of water, vote for Buzz.
I'll give you a bottle of water if you don't vote for me. Can I do that?
I would need something stronger than water because I would love to see you in office just to see what would happen.
No, God, no. I would piss everybody. I would piss everybody off. So nobody's votes are being stolen, but apparently a House district has been from a candidate. This story perplexes me. So there's this guy, Demoine Kinney, I think is his name.
Yeah.
So reading from the AJC, he found out in redistricting last year put him within new political boundaries, a fact that he learned after he had filed to run for office in the district where he thought he lived. And he might be disqualified from the race because his home this is quoting from the AJC. He might be disqualified from the race because his home isn't located inside the Conyers area district he would represent. Quoting Kinney, wait a minute, it's got to be some kind of joke or something. When you look at the map, it looks like they intentionally drew me out of the previous district. They
did. They did.
So before redistricting, he lived in House District 91. And
is that Rhonda Taylor?
Yeah, Rhonda Taylor. Most of the district was unchanged after redistricting, except that it was given a new number, House District 92, where Kinney decided to run for office. But a pocket of the district where Kinney lives became part of House District 93. So he has been running for the wrong district.
There's no maybe about this. The dude's going to be kicked off the ballot.
His candidacy has to be challenged for him to be kicked off the ballot.
Well, I think that's he wouldn't be seated because he doesn't meet the constitutional requirements. So if he's not kicked off the ballot, this dude's, if he wins, he's not winning. He's not taking the seat. So yeah.
He said he contacted the Rockdale County, the Secretary of State's office, and somewhere I think the Democratic Party, and then when they checked his driver's license when he filed, he paid his $400 qualifying fee,
which is non-refundable.
Which is non-refundable.
And the party gets that money, so the Democratic Party is going to keep his money,
right? And he basically said no one told him he couldn't, which I'm not so sure is a valid excuse.
No,
and the maps were publicly available before qualifying. So
they were, and they even put out the specialized Google Earth version where you can type an address in and it'll show you down to this specific house where the boundary is and whether or not you're inside of it. And Google Earth is a free program. It's really simple. I have it loaded up on my computer. I looked at maps. I continue to look at maps and pull up Google Earth to look at where the lines are down to the street level. You can absolutely tell. There's no excuse for this. Don't blame anybody else. You made some assumptions. It's embarrassing. The party didn't help you out at all. They more than likely what happened here, and this is speculation on my part, and this could be completely untrue, is that somebody said, hey, to the House redistricting office, could you draw this neighborhood out? And they did, because it's happened to other people, not just Democrats. So incumbency advantage is a bitch, and Rhonda Taylor got you, bro. She got you.
Scott, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Georgia doesn't have nude beaches, does it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well,
I would go and search. Are you interested in going to find a nude beach, Jason? Why do you ask?
I am not. I ask you this question because a candidate for Athens-Clarke County Mayor apparently didn't realize that Georgia doesn't have nude beaches. William Fred Mormon was arrested in Glenn County and charged with public indecency because apparently he went to sunbathe and did not cover his ass. Like literally didn't cover his ass.
And I loved, I kid around with you, but I did read about this, and wow, he said his justification was that women are allowed to wear skimpy outfits, and all he did was bare some butt cheek. And for him to be treated differently than women who are wearing thongs is not fair. It's unjust.
Okay.
That was his reaction.
Let me go ahead and note here that Mr. Mormon is 64 years old.
Dude brings new meaning to the phrase CYA.
Yeah, literally cover your ass. Nobody wants to see a 64-year-old.
Nobody wants to see that, bro.
Yeah.
You know, just
yeah.
And the only reason why he got caught is because people saw it. If he was on a beach by himself, nobody sees it, no crime, right? But people saw that, man.
Georgia does not have nude beaches. Get it through your head or get it through your ass. I don't care.
Or go to some place. I think like Playa Linda in Florida was famous when I was a kid growing up for having nude beaches. I don't know if it's still a thing or not.
I think Jamaica has them. France has them.
I know France does. Right?
Yeah,
go there.
Go
if that's your thing,
else.
Go there. Georgia's not the place for you, man.
No, it is not. That is all the time we have for this week. Thanks, folks, for joining us.
Shout out to Sam Thomas for being our Patreon subscriber. You can get a shout out from us here at the end of the podcast. If you should go to patreon.com/Peach Pundit, sign up for $5 a month and you get a little shout out. If you want a t-shirt with Jason's face on it, you can sign up for one of those too. I'll make it for you personally.
So fun fact, that's actually really popular in the household in Reston. I gave one of the ones you made me to Rob, my roomie, and he was wearing it on Saturday. He actually wore it to dinner on Saturday. No, I'm sorry. He wore it. We went to go see a movie on Friday. We went to go see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and he wore it to the theater on Friday. That's what it was. So that T-shirt has a little bit of popularity in Northern Virginia, my friend.
Did you like the movie?
I did. I know Buzz was going to go see it on Thursday because I had called him about something unrelated, and I liked it. Yeah, I'm a big Sam Raimi fan because I'm a big Evil Dead trilogy fan, and Sam Raimi directed the movie, and I also didn't hate his Spider-Man. I only saw the first two, but his Spider-Man movies. He also directed the early 2000s reboot of the series. He has a very interesting, unique take on cinematography that I appreciate. And
really, I thought it was tedious, man. There was that one particular scene where you just knew a jump scare was coming, and they built it up for like 45.
Are you talking about the one where where I'm not going to say his name for the people who haven't seen it, but where he's in her mind, and the red cloud comes up behind him?
No, the whole movie I thought was a horror flick. I thought it wasn't a superhero movie. I thought it was a poorly done horror film. There's a scene where they're under a river in a tunnel, and it's just like a bunch of cuts. Cut to this facial expression. Cut to that facial expression. Cut to this other facial expression. Cut to the door where the water's dripping in slow motion from above, and it was like, okay, I know. Like I actually sighed, and my wife's like, "In that scene, you sighed," and I was like, "Yeah, I was frustrated. I was completely taken out of the movie because it was just really bad filmmaking." So,
I liked it.
I'm glad you did. I'm happy that my friends.
I also appreciate that Bruce Campbell was in it, who was the star of the Evil Dead trilogy. So I appreciated it. So, but anyway, that's all the time we have. Make sure you go to peachpundit.com. Check us out. This will be on YouTube. In addition to, you can also check us out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify Podcasts, and wherever else fine podcasts are bought and sold.
Smash that like button.
Smash that like button, and also check us out, peachpundit.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for Jeannie Seaver for joining us today, and peace out.